Yeah, good evening. This is Andy Peacher. It's a Families Reunited show right here on freedomtalkradio.co.uk. Go to the chat room if you want. It says at the top of the page on freedomtalkradio.co.uk, chat room, talk to the host. But tonight we've got Stan. Stan's a victim, I'd say, of the NHS. But before we get on to him and the story about NHS medical negligence, blunders and deliberate attempts to shut people up, probably because of complaining in this story, I'm going to play a little jingle that the station plays and read out a little news article, and then we'll welcome Stan on in about another 6 minutes.
Live from Grimsby on Freedom Talk Radio Network, the Families Reunited show with your host, Andy Peacher, every Tuesday and Thursday at 7 p.m. UK time and 2 p.m. Eastern time, USA and Canada. Call Andy when the phone lines are open. UK call number is 0131 618 7778. And from the USA and Canada, call 315 642 4100. Visit the website on www.freedomtalkradio.co.uk. Download TuneIn Radio and do a search for Freedom Talk Radio and listen on the move. Visit Andy's website www.parentsinjustice.co.uk and Andy's forum parentsinjustice.proboards.com.
Yeah, I've just realised I've played the long version of that. I do apologise. Yeah, right. Basically, I want to let you know it's 2 minutes past 2 in Eastern Standard Time and 2 minutes past 7 in the UK. Right, parents. Injustice.co.uk is my website. I do a lot of work for the parents with Maggie Tuttle, Children Screaming to be Heard. But tonight we're focusing on the NHS. I mean, it's all very related, where parents are losing the children, the people who are working are paying higher taxes. Now the NHS are at it, but they have been at it a long time. And as we'll find out on a further show, was the NHS put there deliberately to experiment on their patients? Only time will tell. And our founder of Children Screaming to be Heard, Maggie Tuttle, and a good friend from Canada, Tim, will actually uncover what they think based on history and research. But I've got an article here from the Express newspaper a couple of days back. Patients poisoned and maimed by NHS blunders. Shocking blunders by the NHS have left scores of patients maimed, injured or poisoned this year. Damning figures show. In one case, a patient underwent surgery meant for someone else. The toll of negligence errors in just 6 months have been seen. Almost 150 patients harmed by incidents which include having swabs, needles and medical equipment left inside them, been given the wrong drugs, the wrong patient recovered risky heart surgery, others have been given drug overdoses, and one woman had a fallopian tube removed instead of her appendix. The blunders called never events, which are regarded by the government as these will never happen ever. Yet NHS England figures show that 148 never events from April to September. There were 69 cases where foreign objects were left inside patients, including 11 cases of swabs. One patient had wires left inside, and another patient who was left with a needle in their body. I think Stan had something left in his body officially, but hopefully it was removed. The figures also showed that 37 patients had the wrong part of their body operated on or treated. This included 4 operations on the wrong tooth, operation on the wrong toe. I mean, the list is endless, really. Many hospital trusts had 3 never events, including Gloucestershire Hospitals, Leeds, Norwich and Norfolk, Sheffield Teaching Hospital, South Tees Hospital Foundation Trust. NHS England said the average incident rate is only one never event in every 20,000 patients and procedures. But Dr. Mike Durkin, National Director of Patient Safety at NHS England, said every single never event puts patients at risk of harm that should have never happened. Well, we know that, really, don't we? But please, if you're from the NHS, we would like to challenge your knowledge, because it's not about giving just one side of this story. We want you to call in when the lines are open. The best number to dial in is either one of the numbers you've heard, or 001 347 677 0812. I repeat, 001 if you're calling from the UK, 347 677 0812. And of course, if you're not calling from the UK and you're from the USA and Canada, it's just 347 677 0812. Well, let's move on then to our special guest. As I say, every guest is very special, and this one has got an amazing story. My mouth is still open with, did that really happen? But welcome to the show there, my good friend Stan.
Hello, Andy.
Hello. So, reading that a little bit, I mean, I actually read it too fast, I think. I've got a few words tongue-tied, but you get the idea, though. It's not just you that's saying, look, this has happened to me. It's loads of people.
That's right, yeah. I know quite a few people as well who have suffered greatly from the NHS. Similar stories to mine.
Well, let's go for it. Do you want to tell your story? Then we'll invite people to call in later.
Yeah, sure. Right, it's difficult to know. It's quite a complicated story, and it's difficult to know where to start. So I'll go right to the beginning. In 1985, I suffered. Well, in 1982, I'd done a parachute jump where I damaged my back. I was misdiagnosed for 2 years, so I carried on working with it. I was a glazier at the time, doing shop windows and stuff. Quite a lot of heavy lifting involved. It later transpired that I had a fracture, so I was working all 2 years with a spine fracture, being told that I was imagining it, going to see psychiatrists and you name it. Eventually, they decided in 1985 to do a mass fusion to my L5S1 vertebrae. Following this, I got worse. So in 1989, they did another operation, a discectomy to L4-5, the disc above that one. After that, I had to give up work altogether. But during my stay in the hospital, the treatment was quite bad, and I ended up having to make a complaint against one of the nurses. Didn't go down too well, but of course I didn't think anything of it at the time. I was young and didn't really know what was going on. Later on I had to have a knee operation a few years later, because that was also damaged from the parachute jump. And during my stay in the hospital, I discovered that the night staff, well, quite honestly, they were the most evil people I've ever met in my life. I'll go into that later. There's some real horror stories there. After realising that the spinal surgery didn't work, I was put on all kinds of painkillers. You name it, I was on it. And to a point where a friend of mine told me, look, he said, Stan, you can't keep taking these for the rest of your life because they'll kill you. So when my doctor came around one day, I explained this to the doctor. I said, look, if you're going to keep me on painkillers forever, I said, I need something a bit cleaner than this crap you've got me on here now. So they put me on MST, which is morphine sulfate tablets. Slow release every 12 hours. They started me off on 10 milligrams every 12 hours. This was in 1990. By 1999, I was on 300 milligrams every 12 hours. At which point, in 1999 January, I stopped taking them. I took myself off them without any help from the NHS, which is one of the most difficult things I've ever done in my life. Anyway, during that 9-year period, when I had severe back spasms, I was married at the time. I'm not at the moment. I'm not anymore. But during that time, I had a lot of serious incidents with back going into spasm and stuff. So more often than not, they would bring me into the hospital and give me epidural catheters, with a pumping morphine into the base of my spine. Now, I didn't know a lot about this stuff at the time. I've later found out a bit more about it. But each one of these 9 epidurals I had went horrifically wrong. I'll give you a few incidents. The first one that they put in me, it worked for about sort of 9 or 10 hours. I couldn't stand still. I was making cups of tea for everyone in the ward and everything, walking around with this pump on a trolley and helping people. I couldn't stand still. But then it fell out. So they took me straight back down again and put another one in, which kinked. So I had to go back down again and have it done again. The third one, when I woke up from the anaesthetic, the doctor said to me, and I can remember this like it was yesterday. He said, "How do you feel?" I said, "Well, it feels like I've got a knife in my back." He said, "No, that can't be right." I said, "Well, I ain't making it up, mate." I said, "I feel like I've got a knife in me," but I was in absolute agony. So they changed the pump, the morphine pump, thinking there might be a problem with that. They changed the pump, and I still felt like I had a knife in my back. He went, "Well, we'll send him up on the ward anyway and see how he goes. It might settle down." Anyway, the porter that came down to take me up to my ward, he wheeled me out of the operating theatre into the lift, and as we went over the bump of the lift doors, I nearly went through the roof. He went, "Ooh," he went, "that ain't right, mate." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "I've wheeled thousands of people in here after what you've just had done." He said, "You shouldn't feel a thing." He said, "That's not right." Anyway, they took me up to the ward, and I was in agony, and it went, and I kept begging them for the anaesthetist to come and take this thing out of my back, and he refused. He wouldn't come up. I was left like this for 24 hours, during which time different doctors kept coming to see me. I'd explain to them my problem. They could see I was in agony, and what they did was they kept turning the morphine pump up. And the next one would come, and they'd come back a bit later and turn it up and up and up. And in the end, it felt like my feet were plugged into a light socket. I was literally electrified. It was horrendous. And it got to the point where I asked the nurse to get the doctor up here and take this thing out of my back. She refused. So I requested a pair of crutches or I requested a wheelchair. So I was going to go down there myself and do it. She refused. So I thought, well, how am I going to get down there and get this thing out of my back? So I thought, right, I'll request a commode. They can't refuse me a commode with a toilet on wheels, yeah? So the nurse gave me the commode, closed the curtains and disappeared. I managed to get on the commode and I scooted myself down the corridor, backwards, into the lifts, down to the where the operating theatres are, in the basement. Came out of this and put the lift at the bottom, and all I could see was office doors on either side down this corridor. And I screamed, "Right, where is he?" Right? His name was Dr. Dark, of all names. This nurse came up and she said, "What's the matter?" She said, "What's the matter?" I said, "Look, if he doesn't take this thing out of my back, I don't know what's going to happen." I said, "But he's got to take it out of my back now." She said, "He's in surgery. You can't bother him now." I said, "Listen, he's got to take it out of my back now, otherwise I'm going to rip it out myself." I was in so much pain, it was unbelievable. So eventually, he turned up. He came up to me. "What's the matter with you?" I said, "Take this thing out of my back before I rip it out myself." So he took it out of my back, and I was left on his table, and I could hear these doctors all around me talking about me, saying, "Look at the sight of him, look at the difference in his face now." They could see the relief on my face. And all this doctor could say to me was, "Don't you ever come down here again upsetting my staff." Okay, this is just one incident. Okay, this is what I've been through. Another incident where I had my nephew coming over from Canada. He was only a young lad, and I promised him that I was going to drive him to London and show him around and stuff. So I was prior to him turning up from Canada, I was bedridden. I was in a terrible state. So I'm thinking, I was panicking. I didn't want to let my nephew down. So I wrote to the hospital. My wife wrote to the hospital asking the doctors if they could do something to help me, to get me immobilised. So they had me in the hospital. They took me into the hospital and put another epidural in my back, and same again, like a knife in my back. But they wouldn't believe me this time. Anyway, so I'm getting prepared to go home now with this thing in my back. And I said to the doctor, how am I supposed to move about with this big pump in my, what am I supposed to do with this pump? He said, don't worry, we've got like a holster that goes under your arm. You can hide it under your jacket and you can do your stuff, do your thing, Anyway, so I've got this thing in my back. I'm in the corridor waiting to go home without this holster. He said to me, you've got to ask the nurse and she'll supply you with the holster. So I queued up in this queue. I could barely stand up. Finally got to the nurse and I said, look, I've been told to ask you for this holster. She took me into this side room, looking in all the drawers for a holster, and she said, we haven't got one. I said, well, what am I supposed to do now then? So we're back out in the corridor. I said, what am I supposed to do now then? She said, don't you ever stop moaning. I said, what? She said, don't you ever stop moaning. I said, what are you talking about? I said, I've got to go home with this thing. I need a holster. And at this point, because the voices were being a bit raised, the anaesthetist happened to be in an office right behind me in the corridor, in the opposite door. He came out and said, what's going on here then? I said, well, she's just accused me of moaning all the time. I said, I need this holster, what you promised me. What's going on? He said to me, get in there. He demanded I go into his office. I shuffled into his office. He said to me, sit down. I said, I can't sit down. I'm in agony. He went, sit down. I said, I just told you I can't sit down. Right? And at this point, I thought, I can't take any more of this, so I walked out. I got myself down to the foyer and I booked a taxi. I went home in the taxi. By the time I got home, there was nobody at home. My wife was at work. My son was at school. I had a bed in the living room because I couldn't manage the stairs. I got home, I laid on my bed and I completely broke down in tears. I was completely broken. And I'm lying there thinking, what on earth has just happened? I've got this catheter in my spine, I've got this pump at the side of me. When the door knocked about half an hour later, so I had to get off the bed, open the door, and there was a policeman stood there. I couldn't believe this. I said, what's the problem? He said, we need to talk to you. I said, well, you better come in, mate, because I've got to lie down again and I can't stand up. I got back on my bed. He came into my living room. I said, what's the problem? He said, we've just had a report that you've stolen some property from Hillingdon Hospital. I said, what are you talking about? What property? He said, we've been told that you've stolen a catheter, a pump, a syringe.
Wow.
So I rolled over and I lifted my shirt up while I was still wearing the hospital gown. I lifted that up and showed him what was in my back. He looked at me and said, oh my God. He said, I am so sorry.
They had the cheek. They had the
cheek.
You
won't hear from us again.
Sorry, Stan. They had the cheek to call the police.
Yeah. Oh, they do that all the time.
Because of their negligence.
Yep.
Wow.
I later found out from somebody who knows a bit about this stuff that you're not even supposed to get out of bed with one of these things in your back, let alone go home. I'm filling up now because this is really bringing back some really bad memories here, Andy.
It sounds like you was escaping. You had a choice to either permanently damage yourself at home or be damaged in hospital. You kind of never.
Right. Anyway, so this was done to enable me to take my nephew around in London and stuff. I wanted to show him around in my car, drive him about. So he came over from Canada. This was at Christmas period. This was during the Christmas period. Of course, I'm still bedridden, stuck with this thing in my back. So I let him down. So I felt bad enough about that. But every day or every other day, the nurses had to come round and check my dressing. And on the 8th day, they came round and said to me, looked at my dressing and, oops, problem. You've got a spine infection. So what's going to happen now then? She said, well, you're going to have to get them to come to take you in to take it out. So I phoned up the hospital, explained to them what they've just told me, asking them to bring me back in and get this thing out of my back. They refused. In the end, my then GP, came out and took it out himself, which is completely unlawful and illegal. The only person who's allowed to take a catheter out of your spine is the guy who put it in there. That's the law. Okay? According to my medical records, which I've had analysed by a medical document analyst and a historian who's trained by the Royal Navy, told me he's gone through all my records, and according to my records, that catheter is still in my back. There's no record of it ever being taken out. Right? This is just one incident. Another incident, yeah?
Sure.
And I've nine of these incidents that took place altogether. Now, 4 of these catheters were put in me in the space of 1 month. That's completely illegal. They're only allowed to do one every 3 months or something like that. Anyway, I'm going back quite a long time with that stuff. Another period, I was brought into Hillingdon Hospital with my back in spasm. The anaesthetist was on holiday when I got there. So to tide me over while he was, before he could come back from his holiday break, they was giving me pethidine injections. Now, I was in a ward with this guy I got quite friendly with. Similar problems with mine. We had a bit of a laugh. Nurses don't like that. They don't like you seeing you laughing. And then one day I went out for a smoke and I came back and my bed was gone. So I said to the nurse, where's my bed then? She said, oh, we've had to move it into another room. She said, because we need this space for another patient that's coming in. Oh, well, where is it then? It's in the television room. So I thought, well, that's not too bad. You know, I can watch the telly. I can have a smoke in there as well, you know. And didn't seem too much of a problem. Anyway, so I'm in my bed in the television room when these 2 nurses came in to give me an injection, my first pethidine injection. And they seemed to be joking, having a little joke about something. They was giggling as they came in. And I jokingly said, what's the joke, girls? What's funny? She said to me, you'll find out. I didn't click, you know, figure out what they meant at the time. They rolled me over, stuck this needle in my backside, and I nearly went through the roof. I couldn't believe I've never known anything like it. I said, haven't you got a thinner needle than that? She said, no. She said, we have to use the thickest needle. She said, because this liquid is quite thick. I had to have this every 4 hours for a week. Now, after my left cheek of my backside was so black and blue that I had to swap cheeks to the other side, which eventually became black and blue. Every time they came in there, I dreaded it. I turned over, I would hang on to the bed, the headstand, the posts, the bars, and brace myself before they did it every time. Until nearly a week later, a nurse came in, a sister I've never seen before. She'd just come back from a break. Sister Taylor, I'll never forget her. She said, I've come to give you your injection. So I rolled over, I grabbed hold of the headboard, braced myself. I went, right, go on then, go for it. She said, what are you talking about? I said, go on, do it then. She said, I've done it. I didn't feel anything. I said, what do you mean you've done it? She said, I'm good, ain't I? I said, no, hang on a minute. Look at the state of my arse. It's black and blue. What do you mean you've done it? She said, well, that's how it is. Then it dawned on me what's going on here. I said, do you realise, look at the state of my backside, it's black and blue. I said, do you realise what these nurses have been getting up to in here? She said, yeah, I know what they'd get up to. I said, would you be prepared to admit that in court? She said, yes, I would. But sadly, I never got to see her again and never got followed up. That's another incident for you. They torture people. If they don't like you, they torture you. Alright? Now, following this incident, I made a complaint. And then I refused to speak to anybody. I was put in a room on my own. They stuck a clock, you know, like a school clock, a great big clock, on the wall at the end of my bed. So all I could do was look at this clock all day. That's part of the torture. I refused to speak to anybody, but I'd write down everything. Every time they came in with my medication, I'd write it down. I told them I'm not going to speak to anybody. The particular nurse was banned from the room. I was told that she's not allowed to see me anymore, except I used to get dirty looks from her every time she walked by. Now, after a few days of this, my urine bottles, I had 14 of them altogether, queued up on the side, all full. They never emptied any of them. And one morning, it was 6 o'clock in the morning, I was barely awake, I was sort of half asleep, and I heard someone coming in my room. So I made out I was still asleep, but I could see her walking in my room, this nurse. She walked round my bed, up to my side cabinet, where my notes were, in my notepad, and started rummaging around in my cupboard. So I turned around and went, "Oi, what do you think you're doing?" She ran out of my room, screaming as if I'd just attacked her. Woke the whole ward up, so I made a complaint about that as well. Alright?
Wow.
So she was looking for me notes, basically. Thought I was asleep. That's just another incident. That she later said, they later said that she was reprimanded, but I doubt very much she was. Anyway, I'm going to jump forward a bit now. 1999, January, I stopped taking their prescribed morphine tablets. 3 months after this, after coming off the tablets, it took me 3 months to get off of them. I didn't sleep for 2 weeks. I nearly went insane, but I did it. I came out the other side. It was like coming out of a 9-year coma. I decided to stop taking any medication, and I'm going to try and get myself fit. I can't do any weight bearing, any exercise or anything like that. So I started cycling and I started swimming. And after a couple of months, I'd built myself up to swimming 3 miles a week. I'd go 3 times a week. I'd swim a mile each time I went to the pool. And on alternate days, I'd go on my bike. I got myself quite fit. And then one day, I was cycling home from the swimming pool when I was knocked off my bike by a lorry who drove off, left me lying there. Somebody saw me, called an ambulance. I was rushed to Hillingdon Hospital, where they x-rayed me and just said I've got a sprained shoulder. I really hurt my shoulder and my knee again. So they basically misdiagnosed. But I was addicted to swimming. That was all I was thinking about was when can I get back in the swimming pool. He said, well, as soon as the swelling goes down, he said, as soon as it settles down a bit, you can do your swimming. So I did. I started going swimming as soon as I could, but it got worse and worse and worse. But I'm thinking, no pain, no gain, and all that. Carried on pushing myself, and I got to the point where I virtually collapsed. So I went to my GP, told him what's happening, and I said I want a second opinion. He refused. So the following day, I went back to the same practice and saw a different doctor and asked for a second opinion, who sent me to Mount Vernon Hospital. Now, the following day, I was removed from that practice because I went against the first doctor. They didn't say that, but that's obvious, the reason. Anyway, when I got to the Mount Vernon Hospital for the second opinion, the doctor who I saw just took one look at my shoulder and said, "You've got a ruptured clavicle." Then they x-rayed it, which confirmed it. They decided that there's nothing they're going to do with it, just keep it in a sling and let's see how it goes. Well, anyway, after a while, eventually my treatment stopped. And I kept getting sent from pillar to post. It was like it didn't happen. It was like, I couldn't believe what was going on. Then they started sending me to psychiatrists and saying I'm imagining it. This went on for 3 years, where I reached a point where I was ready to top myself. I was in so much pain, I couldn't function. No one would believe me, even though you could blatantly see the bone poking out at the top of my shoulder. So eventually I decided, right, enough's enough. I went back to Hillingdon Hospital, got an appointment to see the manager. Now, he was a new manager. He'd just taken over the hospital, so he didn't know me that well. In fact, he didn't know me at all. He agreed that there'd been a lot of cock-ups and asked me if I would be prepared to give them another chance to put things right. And he said, if so, we'll get you in as quick as possible and we'll sort it out. I said, well, if you do that, I said, can you look at my knee at the same time? I said, because for 3 years I've been told there's nothing wrong with my knee and it's absolutely killing me. He said, okay, we'll look at your knee as well. So that was like a favour. So I got to see another surgeon. He confirmed that I've got a ruptured clavicle and it needs surgery. In October, and I'll give you the exact dates here because this is quite important. Hang on a sec. In October, they got me in, and I was waiting to go down for the surgery when this doctor came up to see me to draw an arrow with his marker pen where they're going to cut me. He drew the arrow on my knee and went to walk away. I said, hang on, mate. I said, where are you going? He said, well, we'll be up to take you down shortly to do your knee. I said, hang on. I said, I'm in here for my shoulder, not my knee. I said, the knee's a favour. That's an additional thing. Oh, he said, I ain't got nothing here about your shoulder. I thought, here we go. Anyway, he went off. I went down to the manager's office, but he wasn't there. Saw his secretary. I said, look, they don't even know what I'm in here for up there. I said, look, he's just, he said, doesn't know anything about my shoulder. She said, oh, don't worry about it. She said, we'll sort that out. You go back up to the ward. I went back up to the ward. Shortly afterwards, another doctor came along with another marker pen to draw the mark on my shoulder where they're going to cut me. He went to me, oh, Mr. Richardson, he said, I've got a lot of medical records here, haven't you? I said, yeah, I know, mate. And I was just being friendly with the guy. I wasn't being, horrible to him or nothing. I was just being honest. I said, yeah, I know, mate. I said, most of them are cock-ups in here. I said, but I'm only here because the manager's asked me to give it another chance. I said, but I'll be honest with you. I said, I ain't got much faith in it anymore. I said, it's taken me 3 years to get in here. He went, oh, well, never mind. He said, don't worry, we'll be up for you in a little while. 2 hours went by, and I'm thinking, well, where are they? The next thing, the manager turns up with a face that looked like a slapped arse. I could see something was wrong. I thought, well, is he coming to apologise or is there something else going on here? And sure enough, he said to me, right, Mr. Richardson, he said, they've decided they're not going to operate on you anymore. And I said, why? He said, because somebody overheard you say that you haven't got any faith in them. He said, and secondly, we don't think it's necessary. So I said, well, what happens now? He said, you've got to be out of this hospital by midday tomorrow. And this was on a Friday. Just a second. This is on a Friday. The exact date, so this is important. The exact date was the 27th of October 2001. Okay? So the next thing, the manager comes up to me. Then I said to the manager, I'm not leaving this hospital until either you fix my shoulder or you can get me a second opinion. So off he went. The next morning he came back. He said to me in a really abrupt manner, right, Mr. Richardson, he said, we're going to get you your second opinion. We're bringing a guy over from Watford General Hospital, a Mr. Nikos Reesis. And he said, you better listen to him. And I said, but what if I'm right and you're wrong? He said, if you're right and we're wrong, we'll pay for you to have it done privately. So I thought, well, that's not a bad deal, because I know I'm right. Anyway, 9 hours later, that evening, he came along, looked at my shoulder, he looked at the nurse, and said, why hasn't this man been operated on? She looked at me like I was a piece of dirt. Sure enough, so after this, I agreed to leave the hospital on the grounds that they're going to stick up to their promise, that they're going to stick me in a private hospital. So I went home, and a few days later, I got a phone call to tell me that they're not going to pay for this to be done in a private hospital. So I bluffed them. I told them a little porky pie, and I said, look, I suggest you reconsider. I said, because I've got a recording of you saying it. Although it wasn't the case, I didn't really. So they changed their mind. 2 weeks later, I'm in the Clementine Churchill Hospital. Now, I'm just going to go back to the date when he said this, right, which was the 27th of October 2001. On the 29th of October, which was the following month. Now, this was on a Saturday morning, right, so Sunday is not a working day. On the Monday, my GP, Dr. Patel, wrote in my records to the healthcare people, these are the like, out-of-hours people, I'll read it out to you now. This is to inform you that this patient is a known morphine addict and recently was admitted to hospital for surgery. But then on the day of surgery, he was refused the surgery for his shoulder. His request for home visit is classified.
I don't know what's going on there. We've got a little technical problem there, Stan. So we're just going to play a little jingle.
24/7 for your ears only.
Stay informed about the latest Freedom Talk Radio Network news at freedomtalkradio.co.uk. That's freedomtalkradio.co.uk.
Are you back with us, Stan?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, carry on. Because what happens is when you start telling the truth, Stan, our lines get scrambled on Skype, and that causes you to disappear. Sometimes it's your own internet connection, but mostly they do not want this truth to go out. So just keep reading it until you say it properly.
Right, how far did I get then before we got cut off?
I think you was talking about Dr. Reese on the 27th of October.
Right, did you hear the letter I read out?
No, you didn't do that.
Right, okay. Now, Mr. Reese, they agreed to take me into the private hospital, right? 2 days later, on the following Monday, this was on a Saturday morning, yeah? It was written in my medical records, and I've got this in front of me, written by my GP to the health call, which is like the out-of-hours doctors, yeah? It says, this is to inform you that this patient is a known morphine addict. Now, bear in mind, I stopped taking their morphine in January 1999. This is now 2001. This patient is a known morphine addict and recently was admitted to hospital for surgery. But then on the day of the surgery, he was refused the surgery for his shoulder. His request for home visit is classified as not genuine for medical reasons. If he calls requesting a home visit, please do not feel obliged to visit for the shoulder and back pain. Alright? Now, my belief is that the manager of the hospital put that GP up to this, right? Knowing full well that I'm about to go in hospital privately to have what they said was a routine clavicle repair, which is basically shaving a piece off the clavicle and pushing it back down, yeah?
Yep.
Well, so, anyway, 2 weeks later, I'm in a private hospital. I booked in for 2 days. Because that's what it should have taken, routine clavicle repair. It's done all the time. When I woke up from the surgery, they also operated on my knee at the same time, so I had 2 operations simultaneously. When I woke up from the anaesthetic, Mr. Reeses was stood there. He said to me, "I've got to tell you something, Mr. Richardson." I said, "What?" He said, "You've had major surgery." "What do you mean I've had major surgery?" He said, "Well, first of all," he said, "we shaved a piece off your clavicle and pushed that back down." He said, "You had a partial thickness tear to your supraspinatus tendon." I'll explain to you that in a minute, what that is. He said, "Your shoulder was full of arthritis, and we've had to scrape that all out." He said, "Your knee had 2 tears in the cartilage, and was also full of arthritis, and we've scraped all that out." He said, "You've had major surgery." I said, "Hang on a minute, I've got to go home tomorrow." He said, "Well, I suggest you get on the phone and try and sort something out." So I spent the whole day on the phone talking to Hillingdon Hospital, the PCT, explaining to them what I've just been told, and I need extra time in this hospital. They eventually agreed to 1 extra day. I clocked up £100 phone bill doing that, which I found on my doorstep when I got home. but I sent that back to the hospital. Never heard again about that. So he told me he'd repaired this tear in my supraspinatus tendon. Now I want to just explain to you what the supraspinatus tendon is. It's a large tendon that comes up across your shoulder blade. It goes under the clavicle and attaches to the ball joint of your arm. It's what pulls your arm into your body. You know, like a child's doll with the elastic in it, that holds the arms on. It's similar to that. So that's got a tear in it in the back. He said he's repaired it. Anyway, last year, I'm just going to jump ahead a bit. Last year I went to Poland to get some scans done, privately. And I was told there that there is still a tear in my supraspinatus tendon, and it's quite big. The tears in the tendons do not heal. They need to be repaired. He said the more you use your arm, the bigger it's going to get. That's why I feel like I've got a knife stuck in my shoulder blade all the time. He said, and also where the tendon adjoins to the ball joint of your arm, he said it's completely disconnected. Which is why my arm's completely dropped. My whole shoulder's collapsed. Right? Now I thought it was due to the fact that what he actually did was he amputated half of my clavicle. He's removed all the tendons, all the ligaments that support the arm, part of my subscapular, and probably scraped the tendon from my ball joint. Now this could not have been done by accident. It could not have happened on its own. Right? There's no natural cause for your tendon to come dislocated from the ball joint of my arm. It's impossible. So I can only assume it was done deliberately as a punishment. So we're not talking a bodged operation here. We're talking about grievous bodily harm with intent, Mr. Rhesus, if you're listening. Right? Anyway, so I'm going to go back to that surgery now. 3 years after that, shortly after that surgery was done by Mr. Rhesus, I was bedridden. Right? And the first time I tried to get out of bed, I sat up and my neck went into complete spasm. My shoulder dropped, completely collapsed. I couldn't get a doctor out, and I didn't know why, because I didn't know that this thing had been written in my notes that I'm a known morphine addict and not medically genuine. It took me 4 years to discover that was written in there. So I was bedridden for 6 months, where I reached the point where I was going to top myself because I couldn't cope anymore. And I was on the verge of taking a massive overdose of painkillers when a good friend of mine who happened to live in Devon phoned me up. He just by pure chance happened to phone me up at this point in time. And he could hear the state I was in. And I told him what I was about to do. Don't you do that, Stan. He said, I'm going to come and get you. He drove 200 miles and come and got me, took me in his car and took me back to Devon where I stayed for 3 months to recover. Okay. Now, eventually I came home because I had doctor's appointments and stuff and blah, blah, blah. Sent round and round in circles over and over again. And it got to the point where I'd gone 2 days without sleep. Now, the GP that I was under, the one who wrote this, that I'm a known morphine addict, she'd thrown me out by now, and I was under a different doctor across the road. It's around the corner, a Dr. Mashrew. And I went to see him early one morning because I hadn't slept for 2 days. I had a severe headache, and I was getting pretty worried about it. So I got there really early before anyone else arrived. I went into the office, sat down. I explained to him what my problem was, and he proceeded to write out a prescription. I said, "Oh no, doctor." I said, "I don't need a prescription." I said, "I've got plenty of tablets." I said, "But I need this investigating." Now, this is the first time I've met this doctor. He replied, "You're always argumentative and aggressive, you are, aren't you?" The fact is, I was actually crying my eyes out, a broken man. So what do you mean I'm always argumentative? What are we talking about? And he repeated it. "You're always argumentative and aggressive, aren't you?" I said, "Where's this coming from?" I said, "We weren't arguing." He said, "It's on my computer," which basically confirmed what I already knew, that I was blacklisted. But I didn't have the evidence. Here it was from the horse's mouth. So at this point, I was in no condition to argue with anybody. So I got out of my chair, I went out the door, and as I walked out of the door, I turned round and said to him, I should be seeing my solicitor about this, and I left. Simple as that. The next morning, oh no, that's right. Then when I got home, I phoned up the PCT and explained to them what had just happened. And I said to the woman at the PCT, I bet you, by any money you like, he'll throw me out of he'll throw me out of the practice. He'll have me removed. She said to me, "Oh no, he won't do that. Don't you worry about that." I said, "I bet you he does." I said, "Because they all do it. They've all done it. They don't give reasons. They just release you." I said, "I'll guarantee you, he'll throw me out of the practice." She said, "Would you like me to phone him and ask him?" I said, "Well, it's up to you." I said, "But I know the game. I know the pattern." Anyway, she phoned me back later that day. She said, "I've spoken to the doctor and he said he's not going to remove you. So don't worry about it." But the following day, I got a letter saying I've been removed. So I thought, well, okay, let's take this complaint further. So I wrote to the Ombudsman, explaining it to them. A few months later, I got a reply saying that they're not going to take on my complaint due to the fact that the police were called to an incident at your doctor's surgery on that said date. And I'm thinking, what are they talking about? There was no police, there was no incident. All I did was walk out and said that I'm going to see my solicitor. So I phoned up I was bedridden at the time, I couldn't go out. So I phoned up my local police station. And I got a really nice police officer on the other end of the phone. And I explained to him what I was told. And I asked him if he would be kind enough to look at any records to see if there was an incident where the police were called at my doctor's on that date. He said, "I'm not really supposed to do this without you being present," he said, "but you sound genuine enough. I'll have a look for you." He went off for a few minutes and came back. He said, "No, there's nothing here about any visit to your doctor by any police officers." I said, "Well, how's that possible?" I said, "They're telling me that they did." He said, "It sounds to me like they're trying to discredit you to get you off their books because that's what they do." That's his very exact words. So I said, "Well, what do you suggest I do now?" So he said, "If I was you, I'd write back to them and request what the police officer's name was, what time did they turn up, what questions did they ask, what was his number plate, give them all these questions." He said, "And see what they come back with." So I did this, fully expecting them to not be able to respond or answer my questions. And what I actually did get was a report where they'd gone to the police station 5 days later, and reported that I was threatening and abusive. It was done at the police station, and it was done 5 days after. The following day, I was allocated to another doctor, a Dr. Burley, at the Acorn Medical Centre, Long Lane, 149 Long Lane, Hillingdon. He specialises in violent patients. I was allegedly, this is what they write, it's written, "You are allegedly allocated to the violent patient scheme." Alright? Now, I was forced under this doctor, where you can't change your doctor, you're forced to stay with him as long as they like, as long as they keep you on it. It took me 3 years to discover that there's no mechanism for appeal, so I was writing letter after letter trying to claim my innocence, but getting nowhere. It wasn't until I actually went to my local priest and begged him to help me. He was the one who found out by contacting the GP that there was no mechanism for appeal. They didn't tell me this, but they told him. They also told him not to keep contacting them and shut him out, completely shut him off. They kept me on this violent patient scheme for 3 years. They eventually released me. And a year, 2 doctors later, I ended up under another doctor who was absolutely hopeless. He threw me out. I went to another doctor. While I was under this other doctor, I requested my medical records. During one of my visits with him, he had my records there, but he only had half of them. I said, well, where's the rest of my records then? He said, I don't know. So I thought, that's not right, is it? The following morning, I was removed from that practice. But they also asked me, why am I requesting my records? And I told them, I'm investigating Dr. Burley, because I don't think I think he's a bit crooked. Of course, next day I'm kicked out of the practice again. Back on the violent patient scheme. Now, they alleged that I made a threatening phone call. But actually what I was doing was requesting my medical records. Now, this later, in my medical notes, it morphed from threatening and abusive behaviour to violent acts towards others. Although there's never been anything of the sort. I've never been threatening. I've never been abusive to any of these people, ever. And if I was certainly violent towards anyone, I'm sure there would be a police record of it. So I will challenge any of these people to prove it. Okay? Now, I was kept on this violent patient scheme right through till 2007. In 2007, every time I requested a referral to a surgeon, I was just told no. Or when they did refer me, the first thing that they would read in my medical notes, and I'll just get one for an example for you. Here's hang on a sec. Because in 2005, I was booked in to have a knee replacement. Hang on a sec. Can you just bear with me a second?
Sorry, I'll just comment for a second.
I've got it now.
I've been looking for the criteria, Stan, for how do you, how are you made to go on the violent patient scheme?
Well,
I mean.
Well, I can explain that.
Okay, you carry on, mate.
All they need to do is get a CAD number. They can make up any accusations they want. The police have to give them a CAD number, yeah?
Yeah.
Anyone can do this. You can say that about anyone you like and make an accusation. You will get a CAD number. On the strength of that CAD number, they will put you on the violent patient scheme. Right? Now, a friend of mine, Michael Doherty, I'm hoping he'll come on later. He's got evidence of this because he tried to make a complaint about his daughter who was getting problems, and they threatened to put him on the violent patient scheme. Fortunately, he'd recorded it and he got an apology. So this is what they do. This is how they shut people up. Right? They threaten you with the violent patient scheme, or scam as I call it, because there's no mechanism for an appeal. So you can't you can't claim your innocence. You've got no leg to stand on. So basically, you become a prisoner.
And I guess in a court of law, if you wanted to go and say, look, I want to charge them for X, Y, and Z offence, does that violent patient register help them in their defence?
Well, it's all part of discrediting you, isn't it? It's character assassination, basically.
Sure.
Anyway, here's an example. Now, bearing in mind that surgery that I'd had, now I was booked in 2005 for a knee operation. My pre-admission medical information, I've got it in front of me. It says at the bottom, has the patient any other significant medical history? Here's what it says. 1. Lumbago. No mention of the 2 spine operations I've had. 2. Asthma. 3. Drug overdose. 4. Cannabis abuse. 5. Opioid type dependence. And that's it. Now, the cannabis abuse is interesting because some years ago I discovered the therapeutical uses of medical marijuana. And I was given some leaflets on it. So I took one of these leaflets to my doctor one day to try and educate her. And that was the response I got. It was added into my records. I'm a cannabis abuser, whatever that's supposed to be. Okay, so this is all basically, it's all character assassination. There's no mention of any of my medical history here at all. All right? Then they go on to say, active problems. Histrionic personality disorders, violent acts towards others, asthma, osteoporosis, arthroscopy to knee and shoulder. No, I don't think it was just an arthroscopy. I had major surgery. And then it says violent acts towards others again. This is the first thing a surgeon sees when I go to see them. Right? Now, going back to the violent patient scheme, while you're on this scheme, every month they have a review. So where they decide how long they're going to keep you on it for, yeah?
Right.
Two of the people on that team who review it, one is the GP, and one is the GP's practice manager. Okay. Now my GP's name is Dr. A.J. Burley. All right. The practice manager's name is V.J. Kumar. But I later discovered from my chemist, who knows them quite well, she told me that they're brothers. So I looked it up, done a bit of research, and discovered that A.J. Burley, his full name is A.J. Kumar Burley. And V.J. is named V.J. Kumar Burley. But he doesn't use the Burley, he uses Kumar. So none of the patients actually know that they're brothers, except for me. And I have questioned them on it, on the phone, recorded it, where they tried to deny it, but later, eventually, they've admitted it. So that's a conflict of interest for a start, to have the two brothers on this panel deciding whether I'm staying on this violent patient scheme or not. Thanks to Michael Doherty, just now, who helped me with this, we eventually got me off the violent patient scheme, because we went to see the PCT management, had a meeting with them, and explained them the whole story, and that we were going to take legal action against them for hang on a sec. Yeah, it was hang on. Yeah, it was under the human rights legislation. So shortly after that, they released me, and apparently I've heard that they've stopped using it ever since. They don't use it now, because we proved that what they were doing was completely unlawful. They even told my MP Nick Hurd, who I had a meeting with, and explained to him about this violent patient scheme. They told him that I refused to go along with their appeals process, but there wasn't one. Nick Hurd then took me off his case on the grounds that I was being awkward and I wouldn't go along with their appeals process. A month later, they sent me a letter, issue number 1 of instructions how to go through an appeals process. So they just created it a month after they told him that there was one, when in fact there wasn't. So they lied to Nick Hurd, and on the basis of that, Nick Hurd refuses to help me. Yeah? Am I making sense at the moment, Andy? Hello?
Yeah, sorry, you're making loads of sense. When are we going to play the little clips?
Right, okay, yes. Right, going back to the fact that I went to Poland, we'll go with... Right, when I came back from Poland, with my diagnosis, that I was told that I need at least 3 operations, major operations, to repair my shoulder. One would be to reconnect the tendon to my ball joint of my arm. The other would be to repair the tear in the tendon, and the other one would be to somehow maybe do a prosthetic clavicle to reconnect it all to my arm. So when I came back and gave this to my GP, I said, I'd like another referral to see Mr. Rhesus. He refused to let me see Mr. Rhesus. In fact, he sent me this. Oh no, hang on, I'll come back to that in a second. So he sent me to a Dr. Corner. Michael Doherty came with me at the time. The whole thing was recorded. Who looked at my shoulder, looked at my X-rays, and agreed that what they said in Poland was absolutely true, and that I do need some serious surgery. He said, but I'm not prepared to. I'm not qualified to do it, so I'm going to refer you to Mr. Lambert. Now, Mr. Lambert, in 2005, performed another operation on my shoulder. He put 2 screws in it. He told me he was doing a shoulder reconstruction. He put 2 screws in it. 3 months later, we took the screws out. And shortly after, my shoulder collapsed again. Mr. Lambert wrote to I got a letter from Dr. Burley following this referral to Mr. Lambert, which I should read out to you. It says, just a second. Right, this is a letter from Dr. Burley regarding my getting a follow-up treatment for my shoulder. It says, Mr. Richardson, I received a letter from Simon Lambert, consultant orthopaedic surgeon at Stanmore Hospital. I understand that you were expecting to be seen there. Mr. Lambert says, in inverted commas, when being treated under my care for his right shoulder, he was frequently extremely aggressive, using threatening and abusive language directed at me and the clinic and over the telephone and our secretarial staff. It became serious enough for him to be served with a form of restraining order by the hospital. I personally was on one occasion particularly frightened when he threatened to physically harm me. Then underneath that it says, Mr. Lambert has refused to see you because of your behaviour. Okay? Now, if you could just play that recording I've sent you.
Okay. There we go.
This was at my last appointment with this doctor. Any problems with my behaviour at all? No. Could I have it?
Sorry.
Because my GP is intent on making up these. My letter to the GP will be copied to you. You'll see what I think to the GP. Yeah, I saw what you wrote last time. Yeah. You said that I'm schizophrenic, didn't you? I asked if he thought you might. Yeah, but why would you think that when this is, you know what I mean? This is not schizophrenia. This is.
Sorry, that's not come out very good, has it? Do you want me to play it again?
Yeah, sure. No, he's just explained what he said. I asked him during my consultation with him, where he refused to treat me again, due to all these false accusations about me. I thought, well, just to cover my back, I'll ask him, have I been in any problems? Have you had any problems with my behaviour at any of my meetings with you? And he replied, no. And that was the last time I saw him. And then they write that I physically threatened to harm him. This is how they get out of having to deal with me, you see. This is what they do. They lie through their teeth. My medical records are packed with lies and false accusations. None of them can be proven because none of them are true. You know, it just goes on and on and on. I've reached the point now where there's no point in going to see these doctors because they've already got me branded before I even get there. So at the moment, I'm stuck with a collapsed shoulder. I'll just take you to another. If you could just play another recording. If you can just play. Let's have a look. Number 3, please, Andy.
Okay.
I'll just explain what it is first, can I?
Yep.
This is during a period where I'd taken into Hillingdon Hospital with my a broken rib, and my neck. And I was told at some point that I'd got 3 collapsed vertebrae in my neck. Now this is due to the fact that my right arm is no longer connected to my body, so the weight of my arm is being taken up by my neck as opposed to my clavicle. Right? I've already got diagnosis of advanced arthritis in my neck, throughout the neck. So I was talking to this doctor just before they told me to leave about my neck, and if you'd like to play it now, you can just.
There, but there.
Well, you're saying it's not been fractured at all?
There, no, but there.
Yeah, my neck.
Between the 2nd and the 5th vertebrae, there is sort of narrowing of the spaces.
Well, I've got 3 collapsed discs, so I know that for a fact.
That's what is causing all this trouble.
So 3 collapsed discs, did you say?
Yeah.
So it's 3. 4. So I'm just relaying this.
Yeah.
I've got 4 collapsed discs in my neck,
and that's what's causing all this pain.
You're saying I have.
It's very clear. 4 collapsed.
He's trying, yeah. So what he was trying to tell me was that all my problems stems from my neck. They're trying to say there's nothing wrong with my shoulder. Right.
Okay.
Now then, I've got throughout all this period, I've got copies of some of my medical records, blah blah blah, and I've discovered that at least 3 sets of my X-rays have been blatantly doctored. Right. Now, if people like to check out my video, deliberate misdiagnosis, on victim of NHS Victim 1 on YouTube, you can see where Luton Hospital sent me x-rays of my shoulder, and they've put like a block on top of the clavicle. It looks to build it up, to make it look like it's the same height as the other one. Yeah? I actually went and saw a doctor last week, a friend of mine's doctor. I told him I was living with him and as a temporary patient. And I showed him this x-ray, and I asked him what this was. I said, what do you think that is, this bulge on top of my clavicle? He said, it's a muscle. Well, I'm sorry, you don't have a big muscle on top of your clavicle unless you're Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's just a thinner layer of skin. And if anyone out there touches their clavicle, their shoulder, you can feel the bone quite simply. It's quite easy. So he automatically tried to cover it up, you know. But what they did, they've added something to it. They've cropped the images. You can blatantly see where they've cropped the images by the fact that when you have an X-ray done of your shoulders, they put a clip on the X-ray on the board when you're having an X-ray done, either right or left. It's a metal clip that clips on the board just prior to you having the X-ray done. On this X-ray, you can blatantly see that you can only see a small fraction of the letter R, and next to it was a sticker with a clear picture of an R. This was done because they'd cropped the image to hide the fact that my clavicle has been amputated. Yeah? And I've made a few videos to confirm this, so people can go and look at this themselves.
Yeah, well, anyone listening to this show after the live version, they'll have all the YouTube videos and all the links on this page
okay.
as well.
Fine, that's great. So, yeah, I don't know whether you want to... I don't know whether I've sort of cleared it all up by now, or if there's... I might have been rambling a bit there, but it's all very complex, you see, and it's all rushing through my mind at the moment of all the stuff that's gone on, you know.
It's all really good. Is number 2...
number 2, right.
That's 14 minutes.
Right, okay. Before you play that, then I'll just explain the story behind that. Before I do that, I just want to show you something else quickly. Now, in 2010, no, we'll do this first and I'll come back to that. Right, in 2010, I was in a terrible way. My neck had seized up. I couldn't move my head. I was in a really bad way. But realising that if I went to the hospital, they would just tell me they'd just throw me out like they always do. So I decided to go to a hospital that I've never been to before. So we went, and I got my son to take me there. My ex-wife came along. So we decided to tell a little white lie in order to get some x-rays done by telling them that I'd fallen down a flight of stairs. I hadn't. But this was actually 6 months after I'd broken my rib. I had a nasty fall and landed on my elbow and cracked my rib, which is denied. All my medical records don't show a break in the rib. They've just said that, I'm making it all up. Anyway, so we told them I fell down the stairs. By the time my son got me to the hospital, I couldn't even get out of the car. They had to get the paramedics to stretch me out of the car. They took me to the accident and emergency ward. They did a whole upper body x-ray. And a bit of a panic. I could see them all panicking. They said they're going to take me out for a scan. So I said to the nurse, well, why do I need a scan then? She said, well, because you've had such a significant injury. Now, bearing in mind, they think I've just fallen down the stairs, but I hadn't. This is how I was. This is how I've been living. She said, well, if you want to play it, the tape will explain it now from there on, because it was recorded.
Yeah, if you want me to stop at any point, just tell me.
Okay.
Abnormal. Okay, so we need to make sure what's going on there. We need to get a CT scan of the neck. Because you're not quite sure what's happened from the point of view of events. We need to also get a CT, so we're getting a CT scan of the head, the neck, and of the tummy, because we're worried about any sort of injuries in that liver, because you're so tender out here. I'm not going to press, I'm just putting my hand there, which is why we need to check that. Okay? We'll need to get x-rays of the thoracic spine and the lumbar spine. You did quite a significant injury, so...
Have we done that yet?
No, we haven't done that yet.
Oh, I thought we did.
No, we need to get the CT done first, and then because these are the more worrying signs.
So what x-rays have we done so far?
We've done the neck, the chest and the pelvis.
What do they show?
The neck is abnormal. I'm worried that you've got a fracture there. Okay, it's very suggestive of fractures. The chest X-ray looks okay, but this, what we call the diaphragm here, has moved up, which can sometimes be an indication of injury to the liver. So that's why we need to get a CT scan. You can't tell that from an X-ray. You know, we need a CT scan.
I thought I could work out where my liver was exactly.
Exactly where the pain is.
But before you said about the liver, I imagined it was like my lung pushing out.
Okay.
Trying to get out, you know what I mean? That's what it feels like.
So that's, I'm afraid it's going to be a case of more scans, okay?
That's all right, I
We need
don't
to be
know
careful.
But I can put it on the
No, you're definitely going to have to put that one on. Alright.
Alright, thank you, man.
Okay, Andy.
Yeah, that seems crystal clear again, Stan.
Right, now then. Following that scan, I was admitted onto the ward. Now this was on the first day of the Easter holidays. So my GP wasn't around for 4 days. Nobody was. There was no consultants around. They admitted me onto the ward at West Middlesex Hospital. Pumped me full of morphine. Every 4 hours I was given morphine. On 2 occasions I tried to go and have a smoke, but I had to I was brought back because I collapsed on both occasions because my neck completely seized up. They put me in a plastic neck collar and a sling to hold my shoulder up, and everything was quite, there was no problems at all during that 4 days. And the day before they were all due to come back from the holiday, I actually predicted to my friends on the ward, the other patients, that I would be thrown out the following day. I knew this would happen, because this is what happens everywhere I go. And sure enough, the following morning, the consultant came up to me. He said, right, Mr. Richardson, we looked at your x-rays, and he said, and there's nothing we can do, so you're being released from the hospital. I said, well, what do you mean? I said, what about my shoulder? What are you going to do about my shoulder? He said, we can't do anything with your shoulder. I said, well, why not? He said, because there's nothing to operate on. Now, I thought up till this point that my shoulder was just disconnected. I didn't know what was wrong with it. I said, what do you mean there's nothing to operate on? I didn't know what he was talking about. He said, it's been excised. In other words, it's been amputated. So there's nothing there to operate on because it's not there. He said to me, if you want to have it looked at, I suggest you go to the surgeon who did it. He said, I said, what about my rib? Have I got a broken rib? He said, yes, but we don't repair ribs, which is, that is the case in most instances. But mine was quite a severe break. Obviously, it was damaging my liver, which is also obvious when you see my videos later. He said, you've got to leave the hospital. I said, I'm not going anywhere until you either fix my shoulder or you send me to another hospital who will fix it. Anyway, a few hours later, 2 security guards came along, telling me to get out of bed and go. Now, I'm in a neck collar and a sling, and I'm just, I'm on morphine. I was in no state to even get out of bed, let alone go home. Demanding that I leave the hospital, and I said, no, I'm not going anywhere, lads. I showed them my x-rays. I was explaining to them what the problem was. He said, well, I'm sorry. He said, we're only trying to help you. I said, well, if you want to help me, I said, get me the surgery that I'm in need of. He said, look, if you don't leave the hospital, we're going to have to call the police. Well, they were already there. They were out in the corridor waiting. So I said, well, go and call the police then. Do what you like. I said, I'm not going anywhere. So the next thing, I've got 4 police officers. So I've got 2 security guards, 4 police officers, and they turned up with a wheelchair, demanding I get out of bed and go home. I said, I can't go anywhere. I said, look at the state of me. I showed them my x-rays. Look at this, I've had this, that, and that done. I said, I want my shoulder fixed. He said, well, we've been told that the only problem you've got is a chronic mental disorder. And I said to the officer, would you take your job on that? He went, yes, I would. So I asked him his name and blah, 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 and I stood my ground, but this time I was I pulled my video camera out because I had that hidden under my table, recording it all. So at this point, I pulled it out because they started packing all my stuff away. My laptop was on the table and everything. They started unplugging everything. So I'm filming them all. And they packed all my kit up. Told me to, ordered me. Eventually, my tape ran out. Within an hour of my tape, there was seconds. And they said to me, look, we've been told that you're not allowed to film in the hospital, and blah, blah, blah. So I had to switch it off. And I had to comply in the end. They frog marched me out of the ward into a lift. Now, first of all, I refused to go in the lift with them. I started heading towards the stairs. They grabbed hold of me and shoved me in the lift, pushed me towards the back of the lift. Now, I was pretty scared at this time because any sudden movement was agony to me. It was like my rib was broken, my neck was seized up. Fortunately, that lift didn't work, so we had to come out of that lift and into the next lift. And I was so pleased that there was somebody in that lift. There was a woman with her kids in there. And I was so relieved to see them in there because I knew they wouldn't start shoving me about with her there. Anyway, we went down to the first floor, ground floor. They frogs marched me to the door where my son just happened to be turning up to come and collect me and saw me on my way. And that was the end of that incident. Now then, shortly after this, it was in the newspapers that Nikos Resis was just found guilty for malpractice. A woman lost a leg because of him. One guy had his ankle operated on, but he shouldn't have done. But apparently Nikos Resis had lied about his x-rays. 15 other charges were taken into account, and yet the doctor was let off with a warning.
And I'll just add on that, it wasn't just to the NHS trust that he actually works for, it was a General Medical Council.
That's right. Right, now then, shortly after I found this newspaper article about him, I phoned up my Dr. Burley and asked him to make me another referral to Mr. Resis. And he would say, like, he doesn't want to see you and all this. Then I got a letter, which is absolutely astonishing. It states, Dear Mr. Richardson, I wrote to Mr. Resis at Mount Vernon Hospital because you informed me that you saw him there at Mount Vernon in the outpatients when we spoke. I have now telephoned Mount Vernon Hospital. Now that's where I saw him for a follow-up. Hillingdon Hospital, which is where I was originally, where they called him out to do my second opinion. Wexham Park Hospital and the Clementine Churchill Hospital, which is where he operated on me, the private one. It states, none of these hospitals have heard of him. I'm not sure how to locate him. Please clarify for me. Please write to me in brackets where you saw him and let me know where he is working if you are aware of this. Now, I don't know what you make of that, but it looks to me like my GP was trying to make out he doesn't even exist. I know full well he knew who he was. I've got correspondence from the two of them. Right? He knew exactly where he worked. The one hospital he didn't mention was Watford General Hospital, which is where he's based. And he knows very well that. He knows that for a fact. Now, Mr. Resis, about a year or so after he'd done his surgery on me, I had a follow-up appointment with him at Mount Vernon Hospital. And he just basically said to me, we've had some scans done and there's nothing wrong with you. And he was about to sign me out of his clinic. And I thought, no, if he does that, I've got to start from square one. So I begged him to at least send me to a pain management or something, just to keep me in the system, So he sent me to a Dr. Collins, pain manager. I said, can you assure me that she will treat me for my shoulder, neck and my back as a whole? He went, yeah, no problem. So, I finally got my appointment to see this woman. She then sent me for physio. Now, after the first couple of sessions of physio, my neck completely seized up and I collapsed in the gym. They actually put me on a bed, gave me all these heat pads and stuff, and for about a couple of hours until I rested up, and then they stuck me in my car and sent me home. And said that we're going to have to discontinue your treatment until we know what's going on here. Now, what they actually did, rather than write to Dr. Collins, who referred me there, they wrote to my Dr. Burley and told him that I came into the hospital distressed and upset, and I could probably use some psychiatric help. That old chestnut again. They never informed Dr. Collins that my treatment had been stopped. And it wasn't until about a year later that I finally got back to see her, because out of 12 appointments, 6 of them were cancelled. When I finally got to see her, and this is all recorded, because I recorded everything, she was talking to me about this, that and the other, and I was explaining to her what had gone on with me, and it was like, it wasn't computing. I could see it on her face. It was like I might as well talk to a brick wall. And I happened to have some notes on me, including my surgery notes from the private hospital. I said to her, listen, doctor, I said, are you aware of the surgery that I've had? She said, no. I said, well, why do you think I'm here? Why do you think I was referred to you then in the first place? She said, lumbago. So I pulled out these notes of the surgery that I'd had at Mount Vernon and showed it to her. And after she read it, I said to her, would you say that I've had major surgery there? She said, yes, Miss Richardson, I would. She said, I'll tell you something else, she said. Mr. Rhesus hasn't informed me of any of your surgery whatsoever. And she was really pissed off. She wasn't happy about this at all. She wrote back, she said, I'm going to book you in for next week so we can follow this up. And I'm going to write to Mr. Rhesus and find out what's going on, to ask for your medical records, because she didn't have any. He wrote back, I've got 4 letters here, which are under a bit of a pile now. I can dig them out in a minute. But out of the 4 or 5 letters that I've got here from Mr. Rhesus, not one of these letters mentions the shoulder surgery. All right? They all talk about my back problem. But I never saw him for my back problem. I saw him because he operated on my shoulder and my knee. But none of this is mentioned in any of his letters. Now, don't you think that's a little bit odd?
Very, very.
In fact, none of that surgery was put in any of my medical records at all. In fact, all you will see in my records from my GP is that I had an arthroscopy, which is a routine procedure.
But surely you know that even though he did the surgery,
yep,
there must be other, like nurses, anaesthetic people, you know, although it's not written in records, they must know deep down that they did it.
Yeah, I know, but they're not going to say it, are they? They're all frightened. You know, these surgeries, they're looked upon as gods to a nurse. When the surgeon comes, if you're in a hospital on a ward and the surgeons come and do his rounds, you know, they're treated like God. You know, all the nurses are all on edge. You know, they won't say a word against them. They'll all look out for each other. In fact, I've met a woman once. I met somebody who trained to be a nurse. She decided to quit the game because she said during the training, she said 95% of it was training on how to cover your ass.
At this stage, can we? I'm going to play a little jingle while you get the next piece of the story. Remember, also we're going to discuss arachnoiditis soon.
Yeah.
Also, we can invite people to call in if they want. If you're in the USA and Canada, it's 347-677-0812. From the UK, 001-347-677-0812. And if you know me personally, just Skype me and we'll get some questions going before the end of the show. At 9 o'clock, in another 35 minutes, the live show does end, but we can carry on recording if everybody's happy. But before that, we'll go for a little commercial break.
You're listening to the 24-hour radio station Freedom Talk Radio, live on the internet at www.freedomtalkradio.co.uk. You can email the station at freedomtalkradio2013@gmail.com. Call to the live shows 0131 618 7778, and that's from the UK. If you want to call from the USA or Canada, you need 315 642 4100. If you'd like to become a part of Freedom Talk Radio, we are looking for hosts and volunteers. We're a non-profit organisation with hosts from the UK, Canada and the USA. We are here for you, the station for freedom, talk, liberty, truth and justice. Download the TuneIn radio app on your smartphone. Search for Freedom Talk Radio, tune in to Freedom Talk Radio on the move.
Can you hear me, Andy?
Yes, just it. Yeah, so if anybody wants to call in, we're ready very shortly. Yeah, carry on, Stan.
Are we not live now, are we?
Yeah, we're live all the time.
Oh, we are, because there's something else I want to talk to you about, Dr. Burley.
Yeah, we've got half an hour live to go, and we can still record as well.
Right. Just an example of what Dr. Burley is all about. This is this so-called specialist in violent patients, right? He claims to be a senior police surgeon. He also uses the police like private bodyguards. He's had me thrown out of his practice on 2 occasions where I was physically assaulted by the police whilst wearing a plastic neck collar. Now, I found out where he lives. Now, outside his house in London, at the back of the Olympia, he's got a parking bay, a doctor's parking bay. Now, you're only allowed to have one of these parking bays if you live within a mile of your practice. He lives 15 miles away. He's got 2 cars. Now, I was told this by next to his house there's a shop, a little Indian shop, which is owned by Dr. Burley's mother, part of the property. I had a chat with the guy who runs this shop, and he told me that Dr. Burley is the most hated man in that street. He's a monster. He showed me the car in the bay with a doctor's sticker in the windscreen, for parking anywhere. Then he walked me down the road to show me another car. I said, well, whose car's this then? With a doctor's sticker in the window. He said, this is his wife's car. But she's not a doctor. But she's driving around with a doctor's permit, so she can park anywhere. So this man is corrupt as they come. And if you're listening, Dr. Burley, you're a crook. And you know you are. Yeah, sorry about that, baby.
No, it's all right. They're all crooks. Feel free to
Tell me about it.
freedom of speech.
They're so corrupt, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, and it's not nice. I mean, in the UK, the taxes are rising, the kids are being stolen, the NHS are neglecting us, the MPs are liars, the people now are getting selfish. I mean, what happened to good old Great Britain?
And then they get the police to support them to justify what they're doing.
Yeah, very luckily though, I've learned the police, although they have to uphold law, they actually say, look, I'm only doing my job. It's the law that's the problem, not the police. If the law was changed and people changed, then obviously they'd have an easier job.
Yeah, but half the problem there, Andy, is that the police don't know the law that they're supposed to be upholding. They're enforcing statute laws, which are not laws.
I've just asked our friend from Just Law to, if he's not free tonight, to come on another program with us and talk about law, because I'm very interested in Magna Carta and the common law, because that's a real law.
Well, the thing is, you see, the problem is with the police these days. They're all running around supporting statute laws and acts. But what a lot of people don't realise is that these are not laws, and they only work with your consent. So when a police officer says to you, reads you your rights and says to you, "Do you understand?" More often than not, people will say, "Yes, I understand." Well, as soon as they say that, they've just agreed and made a verbal contract to stand under their authority.
Exactly. I mean, the little example on that, I think someone told me, there's loads of them, but just a simple, "Are you Mr. Stan Richardson?"
Yeah.
Well, if you say yes,
yeah.
But you can actually say no, because you're technically not lying there. No,
right.
that's not me. If they were clever enough, they'd say, "Are you Stan Richardson?" "Yeah, that's me. Why? What's wrong?" Do you know what I mean?
That's right. Yeah. Everything the police officers say to you is designed to make you make a verbal contract to stand under their authority. And people need to wake up to this. It's just completely unlawful.
A good friend of ours, we don't speak a lot, but we do share info. David Mortimer from davy1law.com, I think it is, or Blogspot. He's from London. He's a good man about common law. So it'd be good to have Just Law on as well.
Yeah. Well, Michael's got some interesting stuff to talk about, I can assure you.
Brilliant. What about arachnoiditis then?
Arachnoiditis, right, okay.
And then after we've done that and played the little clip, we've got a caller on the call board. It's FM Bob. He's calling in reference the Liverpool Care Pathway, or as we nicknamed, Death Pathway.
Right.
So it's similar to NHS neglect.
Right, okay. Arachnoiditis, in case anybody out there has never heard of this, which I doubt most of you haven't, is it's the side effects of epidurals. Now, when you're given an epidural, or in my case, which was an intracatheter procedure as opposed to an injection, it's a catheter. When they put this in your back, it's supposed to go into a very small area of your back, the arachnoid space, the epidural space. But more often than not, so when they do this procedure, they should do it with a camera, yeah. But more often than not, they just guess because they think they're clever. And more often than not, they puncture the arachnoid membrane. Now, the arachnoid membrane, if people out there can imagine your spine, all down your spine, you've got your spinal fluid. And inside that spinal fluid, you've got all your nerves. Now, the sac that contains your spinal fluid is called the arachnoid membrane, because that's what it looks like. It looks like a spider's web, which is a sealed unit. The fluid inside it is your immune system. Inside that, you've got your nerves that come down into the base of your spine and spread out like an upside down tree. If you can imagine your nerves coming out the bottom, just like an upside down tree, like the roots of a tree. Yeah. Now, when they give you these epidurals and they puncture that sealed unit, your arachnoid membrane, and inject a detergent, the side effects are it causes the nerves that are floating freely in the base of that sac to stick together and jellify. That's arachnoiditis. The definition of arachnoiditis is this: it's an incurable, debilitating disease of the central nervous system caused by the invasion of the arachnoid membrane. Okay? Now, I've found a specialist on this on arachnoiditis.co.uk. A guy in Scotland. He's a Scottish guy. He was in the Navy. He's a historian and a medical document analyst. And when he's heard my story, now he's a victim of this, he's had 1 epidural and he's hobbling around on a walking stick. I've had 9. He asked me, when I told him my story, he was the first person ever to actually believe me. Before I spoke to this guy, nobody would believe me. They all thought I was a nutter. I was a hypochondriac, or, you know, seeking attention, whatever. This guy, when I told him my story, he knew exactly what I was talking about. He said to me, Stan, he said, I want all your medical records to me as soon as possible. But I didn't know how to do it. How am I going to... I've got box loads of the stuff. I can't photocopy of that and email it to Scotland. So I borrowed £1,000 off my ex-wife at the time. And 2 days later, I was on an aeroplane with all my records on a little trolley, and I flew out to the Isle of Lewis on the Outer Hebrides. I stayed with him for a week, but he kept my records there for about 3 months, and he put them all in order. He went through them with a fine-tooth comb, and his results were that I've been discriminated and blah blah blah. He said to me, Stan, he said, if you haven't got arachnoiditis, it would be an absolute miracle. Now, I met this guy, and he can hardly walk, and he only had 1, right? So this is how I learnt about it. Now, he told me about this woman who'd won a court case, because basically arachnoiditis is not really recognised. Doctors won't even talk about it. He told me about this woman who'd won a case on it, which is like a one-off thing, and she'd written a book about it. So somehow I managed to find her number. She was in Italy, and I phoned her up because I wanted to have a chat with her. She told me that she was at a high society party, and she was having a chat with an anaesthetist. And she said to me, while we was talking, she said, I happened to slip into the conversation, are you aware of the side effects of epidurals? His response was, yes, but we don't talk about it. Need I say more? It's a massive business, right? There's millions of women out there suffering from back pain, thinking it's from childbirth. And it's not. It's from the epidurals that they were having. There's a silent, an invisible epidemic of back sufferers out there, and the surgeons are causing it, and they know they're doing it. It's horrendous.
No, I can go on that one because you may have given my wife the diagnosis that she's been craving for ages. A very similar story with the back issues and the arachnoiditis. Yeah. Lower back pain, L1 to L3. Burning, shooting pains down the legs, numbness at some point, so on and so on. She's had a few injections there to take some spinal fluid away to analyse it. It must be that because the pain relief you were on, I believe it was oxycodone, which is morphine-based tablet. She's been on them for a couple of years, and she still feels the pain with them. And if I took them, I'd be a zombie.
Yeah.
Should we play this little...
Yeah. If I could just explain to you, what this guy asked when I saw in Scotland, I said to him, well, how can I find out if I've got arachnoiditis or not? Because I've had loads of scans. He said, yeah, but you're not having the right scans. I said, well, what am I supposed to have then? He said, when you see your next consultation, make a request for an MRI scan, high definition, gadolinium, T2 weighted. He said, that's what I've got to ask for, right? Which I did. I said, what's the difference between that and a normal scan then? He said, well, you'll know. He said, because when they put you into the tube for your scan, he said, after about half an hour or so, he said, they'll pull you out and they'll inject a dye into your arm and then they'll put you back in there. Okay? So I went for this scan. I requested this particular scan. I was at the hospital having the scan. They put me in the tube, pulled me out, and said, you can get dressed now. And I'm thinking, hang on a minute, what about this injection I'm supposed to be having then? He said, oh, no, we don't need to do that, he said, because we know that you don't have arachnoiditis from what we've seen already. I said, oh no. I said, no, I was booked in to have a high definition gadolinium scan. He said, no, you don't need it. I said, well, I'm not happy about this. I said, can you get someone else in and sort this out? I said, because I'm not going anywhere until I find out what's going on. He said, well, go in the... So I went into the cubicle to get dressed, and I knew he was outside listening, and I phoned up my friend in Scotland, and but he didn't know who I was talking to, and I told the surgeon that I'd just been speaking to a surgeon in America who's following my case, right? And he's to find out what's going on here, and what you're saying. Anyway, so I told him this, and he said, "Okay, Mr. Richardson." He said, "I'm going to go and get someone else to come and have a look at. We're going to have another look at your pictures." So I'm sitting in the waiting room. I watched these two guys go into this door to have a look at my images, and I sat there with my phone ready to record. For when, as soon as that door opened up, I put my phone on record. And well, you've got the recording there, Andy. If you want to play it, it's not very clear. But afterwards, I'll explain to you what he says if you can't understand it.
Okay, 2 seconds.
You have arachnitis. You have 8 grade 1 arachnitis. That means you've got a couple of nerves that have clumped together. Okay, so this is inside. Inside. So you didn't tell me just now that there was nothing inside, you know what I mean? There's nothing massive. Okay, but I didn't have these just come off the...
Right, okay.
Okay, the question again, should we get gadolinium in there? There's no point, because we already know.
Mr. Lambert has asked me to have one done.
Yes, but I don't
want 6 months.
I've senior radiologist, all in town, we are saying that the question is, do we need to get gadolinium for this personal need? Because...
what about the diet?
You have grade 1 arachnitis, so you have to watch it.
Is that the higher one or is that the lower one?
It's normal, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, this is for that.
Oh, I can't get it higher, but anyway.
Yeah.
Right, okay, Andy. So what he said there, in case people couldn't hear it properly, because it's quite old, that is, was that he said, yes, you do have arachnoiditis, but you've only got grade 1. There's only a couple of nerve endings clumping together. When I asked him what grade 1 was, is it high or low, he said, you've got grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, and you're buggered. That's what he said. Now, when I got my report from that, it said on my records, no sign of arachnoiditis whatsoever.
Wow.
Right? They tell you one thing and they write another, and this goes on all the time. They're as corrupt as can be.
Yeah, definitely. Before because we've got 15 minutes yet, I want to bring on Bob, and then I'm going to read an article out myself, and then we can just carry on until you've had enough, because we want to name and shame all the people again, all the hospitals. It doesn't matter if it goes over 9 live, because after 9 it's still on record and it's still finished. You know, it's all in one lump sum, as it were. So welcome to the show now, Bob, good friend of ours and Maggie's, Bob Honecker.
Hi, Andy. Hi, friend there. I'm sorry about Stan. I'm sorry about what you've been through. It's mind-boggling. It's a trigger on one thing, because well, to make a long story short, I found out in Phoenix that I actually should be walking around with polio and never got treated for it. But that's not what we were planning to talk about. Andy asked me to research a little bit of the Liverpool care pathway for dying patients. This is what Wikipedia says. The Liverpool care pathway for the dying patient, LCP, is a UK care pathway, excluding Wales, covering palliative care options for patients in the final days or hours of life. It has been developed to help doctors and nurses provide quality end-of-life care. Don't get me started on that one. The Liverpool Care Pathway was developed by the Royal Liverpool University Hospital and Liverpool's Mary Curie Hospice in the late 90s for the care of terminally ill cancer patients. Since then, the scope of the LCP has been extended to include all patients deemed dying. While initial reception was positive, it was heavily criticized in the media in 2009 and 2012. In 2012, it was revealed that just over half of the total NHS trust have received or are due to receive financial rewards to hit targets associated with the use of the care pathway. These payments are made under a system known as communizing, I can't pronounce that, for quality and innovation, the CQIN, with local NHS commissioners paying trust for meeting targets to reward excellence in care. Okay, I'm going to stop there because this is the exact same thing as what Clinton tried to do with his health care policy and what Obama's trying to do in the United States with their health care policies. What they're actually doing is they're scraping money together for somebody that's terminally ill, and by the time that money gets to the terminally ill, where does it go? Boom, right back to the states, to the government.
I'll give you a little story now, Bob.
What's that, bud?
Yeah, I'll give you a little story. This is nicknamed actually the Liverpool Death Pathway rather than care. This is the real reason it was scrapped. Although having said that 2 days ago, there was a doctor in Newcastle Hospital said this is like getting rid of the Green Cross code. It shouldn't have happened, but I think it should, because there's been many examples of why the death pathway, care pathway should have gone. And this is one simple one. Liverpool Care Pathway, they told my family I was dying. The Liverpool Care Pathway was developed to support patients as they near death, but the reality for patients and families have been mixed. The system, which can involve withdrawal of medication, food and fluids, was developed at the Royal Liverpool University Hospital and the city's Mary Curie Cancer Hospice. I mean, that's the first sort of clue. The system. No, where we go? Yeah, taking away medication, food and fluids. How's that going to help them die in dignity? Anyway, critics dubbed it the road to death and accused the NHS of killing off thousands of elderly patients, which they did. Supporters say it helped their relatives have a peaceful and dignified death. Well, again, it probably did in few cases. But last month, an independent, last month as in November last month, an independent review recommended the LCP be phased out in England. Sorry, this was August, but last month, actually November, it actually went out within the next 6 to 12 months, but it was actually taken out early. One patient under the LCP was 90-year-old Kathleen Vine. 4 months after doctors at a hospital in the southwest of England, and I believe this was Plymouth. What's that hospital? I used to live in Plymouth Hospital anyway. Basically, to cut a long story short, and I will, because we've got some more stand stuff, I think, to go on. But basically, they told the family this poor lady was dying, and she probably was, because they withdraw the fluids, and they give you when you basically the fluids and the food, and you're weak, and you get so weak, they then give you some kind of it's legal. It's probably like morphine, and the combination of no energy, no food, no drink, it finishes you off. but she actually came back to life after one of the family members noticed what was happening. But that lady could have died, and she's still alive today. But that's one example of many people, thousands of people that could have been terminated by the NHS. Stan.
Well, yeah, let's face it, they're just culling people, aren't they?
They're butchers.
Yeah. Yeah, they're monsters. The most evil people I've ever met in my life. The medical profession.
Well, apart from social workers, but then they're probably the same.
And now I got something to say here. NHS, at least in the States, the NHS, you have the NHS, the Department of Health and Human Services, and CPS. That is one big organization. So if they don't treat you properly in a foster care, they'll end up not treating you proper in a hospital, or they'll end up putting you on some kind of medicine that has morphine in it. And I'm sorry about this, Stan, what they did to you, but that's what it looks like. They give you painkillers with so much morphine that when you get a test, you come out to become an addict. And I mean, it's genocide all the way around, and they call that health care.
Yeah, Bob, actually, that was a good point, Stan, from Bob. Over here, it's now the same. In Scotland and Wales, anyway, I don't know about England, the National Health Service, the NHS, social workers in Scotland, so it's NHS social work. So go the other way around, Bob. If you're ill and you complain about complain about the NHS, in Scotland, they can actually get the social workers to give you grief. So that they are all one organisation, Stan, now in Scotland. That's at least.
That's right. What I find amusing, Andy, is they call it a trust. Anything that they advertise as a trust, just do the opposite, for God's sake. Don't trust them, because they're not to be trusted.
Trust the untrust, you mean?
Yeah. The Nazi health NHS Nazi Health Service.
The No Hope Society.
My last point here, and this will probably throw you for a loop, Andy. The reason I was put up for adoption is because when I was circumcised, which happens when you're a child in the States, things got so inflamed there that they thought I had polio. So they told my father, who was in Vietnam, and he ended up saying, "Okay, do what you need to do," and they forced my mother to put me up for adoption. So it's a vicious circle, and we got to find a way to, I don't know, maybe play a Dennis Leary and just go in Demolition Man and just go underground. We can take care of ourselves. All we need is somebody that's done a little bit of doctoring somewhere.
I like that. Underground surgeons. That's good. Stan, do you want, while we're still live, name and shame everybody that you need to, because...
Ooh. Right. Well, Dr. Burley, he's number one, as regarded as GPs. He's a major culprit. He's so corrupt. He's in bed with the police. He uses them as private bodyguards. He's as corrupt as they come. In fact, he doesn't even go to his surgery other than for one day a week. All the rest of the time, he spends his time in his local gym across the road from where he lives, on jogging. That's what he does. Dr. Lambert, the guy who accused me of threatening and abusing him and physical harm, who lied.
What trust is he from, Dr. Lambert?
He's based at the Royal National Orthopaedic Hospital, Stanmore. Dr. Pollock, Dr. Jessup, These are all people that surgeons I've had to deal with. Oh God, do you know what? There's so many of them. I can't think of all the names at the moment.
Well,
but
there's Hempstead.
It doesn't matter who they are. If you've got a problem, they will all cover it up. Doesn't matter how nice they are when you go to see them. Until there's a problem, you know, your doctor might be the nicest man you've ever met, but you come in with a complaint. And what I'd like to add, Dr. Burley, if you've got a complaint against him, you've got to go to the practice manager. And who's his practice manager? His brother. Do you honestly think you're going to get, you know, justice by complaining to his brother?
Well, actually, to point out to anyone listening, they have a website, don't they? The practice, mention the practice, lots of complaints.
Yes. Have you got any in front of you, Andy, so you can read them out?
No, I haven't, no, sorry.
I can get much to that.
Yeah, but most of them are quite negative. What are they like in Holland there, Bob, in Dutchland, the hospital services?
Same thing. I've been trying to get my hands on my medical report. Not only my medical report, but my psychological report as well. And it's they just deny me it.
Yeah.
And I had an accident and messed up my clavicle as well. And it's still sticking out. I mean, Andy, remember that bulge in my shoulder?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's because they didn't want to operate on my shoulder, and it's all over the world, people. I mean, it's so sick, you know. It gives people impasse like myself and Andy sleepless nights, and it's got to stop. I don't know how. And you know, like I said, let's play a Demolition Man and just go underground, okay? Because you know, healthcare. What do you mean?
Can I just butt in there? Make a start by putting all these surgeons and doctors in prison where they belong.
Do you think that's going to work? Do you think that's going to work? No, they're all connected.
It'd be a good start, though.
They're all connected. Come on, they're all connected, and especially here in Holland. This something happened actually not too long ago. The general practitioners are getting government funding now, so they have to be everything at one, and nobody wants to do it. I know of 4 different doctors who have actually agreed with it, and they're always on vacation. So, I mean, you know, what are we digging our own graves, people, or are we letting the government dig our graves?
Well, half the problem, I think, is that most of these surgeons and doctors are Freemasons, and they all look after each other. This is why Nikos Resis was let off from that malpractice case. He's protected by the Freemasons. Hello?
Yeah, he's made loads of different 15 people, yeah? 15 people minimum.
Yeah. No, it's 15 other charges were taken into account, apart from the major one.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's minimum.
Yeah.
There's
And there
people who didn't complain.
Yeah, and there are other cases pending.
Let's hope yours is the next one on the list, yeah?
Hopefully,
not to forget the millions of cases that have just been blown under the table.
That's true, Bob. Let Sam name and shame this Dr. Burley because and Resource and
well, thought I'd already done that. but basically, you know, he really is the most nasty, evil man I've ever come across. In fact, when I was first allocated to him, allegedly allocated to the violent patient scam, I said to him, when I first met him, these accusations that have been put on me as to why I'm on this violent patient scheme, I will prove that I am innocent. And he looked me deep into the eyes and he said to me, "Oh no, you won't." I'll never forget that as long as I live, the way he said it and the way he looked at me. He knew from the start that I was innocent, but he knew that I would never fucking clear my name. Excuse my French.
Well, he's got a shock coming now because.
Right, and also I was just looking for it now, but I couldn't find it quick enough. But if people go on to the complaints about his practice, people are complaining about the rudeness of the staff, the lack of treatment. He's never there. It's just a whole list of accusations. It's not just me. The man's a monster. He shouldn't be practicing. He should be in prison, and that's where he belongs, along with Nikos Rhesis. He's a monster. And what scares me the most is that there are people still going to see that guy, Rhesis, and they have no idea about his history.
Well, we invite Hillington Hospital, Luton and Dunstable Hospital. We invite Hemel Hempstead and any other trust that's out there to challenge you, really, son. I think they need to challenge you. All these doctors.
Oh, I'd love it, Andy. I would love them to challenge me, and I'd like them to prove to me that they have not doctored my X-rays, because I know for a fact they have. And in fact, I have actually been inside at West Middlesex Hospital. I managed to get inside their editing suite, and it's a room full of editing suite, screens, editing studio, the lot, which is where they do it. This is what they do. So I'm not the only one who's X-rays. The problem is, you see, most people can't read X-rays. Because of my experience, I've had to learn. And I know a doctor's X-ray when I see one.
So you say that every hospital probably has an editing suite to edit documents? Wow.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I've been in one. I was in there and I recorded it. I've got video of it. So I can prove that they exist.
Wow, amazing, Bob, eh?
I want to see that video. And I'm actually inviting Stan to blast it all over, but it'll probably be blocked. I mean,
no, it's actually on his YouTube channel.
No, that one is that footage is not actually. That footage is not actually up yet, but now that we've talked about it, I will put it out.
I'm afraid it'll get blocked because you know how Big Brother's watching us.
Well, let them block it, and I'll put it up on another channel, and I'll keep putting it up until so everyone can see it.
Yeah, well, what Stan can do, Bob, we've got Freedom Talk Radio, which is in the US. They can't touch our website. They can't touch our Mixcloud channel either, which is a video podcasting. So
maybe that's the idea. Send it to us, and we'll blast it around.
Well, I've got most of my films are on YouTube, NHS Victim 1, and I've also got a new channel called Eye of Truth UK. So you'll find my films on both of those channels.
That's brilliant. I think we've had it now, haven't we? We've had it. As in, we've had all the information, and we just challenge the authorities, the NHS, to come forward. Freedom Talk Radio 2013 at gmail.com. Now, when they get the legal letters coming in, and they know you've got the truth, they'll panic. This will be shared again now after the fact to all these trusts and the whole internet when I've got time.
Well, can I just add, right? All I need is my shoulder fixing, right? But I wouldn't on my life go anywhere near a British surgeon. I'd have to have it done abroad. and I want it paid for.
And you want a surgery or a surgeon of your choice, not theirs.
Yeah. I've been diagnosed that I need at least 3 major operations just to correct my shoulder. Let alone the fact that I was booked in for a knee replacement in 2005, which I'm still waiting for.
Well, let's chuck in the knee, chuck in the ribs. Also, though, Stan, I think it's only fair, even if they don't admit guilt, they should erase all the negative stuff from your files.
Well, that would require removing all my files.
Okay.
That's because it's nothing but lies, and I can prove it.
Brilliant. I mean, it's not brilliant, but yeah.
Okay, guys, I've got I'm in the board of one of the main healthcare things here. Holland, by the way, I'm going to read a short little article. The Netherlands is the only country which is constantly been among the top 3 in the total ranking of any European index the Health Consumer Powerhouse has published since 2005. In 2012, Holland scored 872 points, is by far the highest ever seen in a HCP index. The UK has 721. Okay? Where am I? The Netherlands wins only one of 5 sub-disciplines of the index, range and reach of healthcare services, and the large victory margin seems essentially to be due to that the Dutch healthcare system does not seem to have any really weak spots, except possibly some scope for improvement regarding the waiting time situation, where some Central European countries excel. Normally, the HCP takes care to state that the EHCI, that I just told you about, that European Index Health Consumer Powerhouse, is limited to measuring the consumer friendliness of healthcare systems, i.e., does not claim to measure which European state has the best healthcare system across the board. Counting from 2006, the HCP has produced not only the generalist index EHCI, but also specialist indexes on diabetes, cardiac care, HIV, headache, and hepatitis. The Netherlands are, as the only country, consistently appearing among the top 3 to 4, regardless what aspects of healthcare which are studied. This creates a strong temptation to actually claim that the landslide winner of the EHCI 2012 could indeed be said to have the best healthcare system in Europe. Okay, this is true. This is true. It is the best. I mean, we're talking a difference between 872 points to the UK's 714. So, Stan, maybe it's an idea to say you want to get help abroad.
Yeah. Well, actually, Rob, it's not actually organised yet, but I was thinking of coming to Holland to get to book myself into a hospital out there. I do have friends in Holland who could look out for me when I get there and stuff. So I'm looking into that for the early part of next year.
All right. I'll look forward to seeing you.
I've got a lot of close ties in Holland. I actually lived there for 3 years back in the 70s.
Okay, I live in Amsterdam, so.
Yeah, great place.
All right. Well, I think the recording's already gone. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I don't know how you called in. go ahead and contact, do my Skype. I'm Robert Honecker on Skype. So you want to talk, it's good. And like I said, I'm actually I'm actually walking around. I'm supposed to have polio, according to what I've heard. So yeah.
Right. Anyway, guys, for Freedom Talk Radio for tonight is thank you and goodbye. And back on Thursday, same time, 7 p.m. We've got Trent from the USA, and I'll explain before that what's happening.
Thank you, Andy.
No worries.
Okay.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks for your courage, Dan.
I'll stick up a thanks, Bob.
Thanks for the blame, y'all. Cheers.
Tot ziens.
Tot ziens.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.